Hello and welcome to the episode 4 of Piano Technique Podcast. I'm your host, Jovan. I'll be hosting the show alone today since Alan is on his North American tour and is currently teaching in Smith College, Massachusetts until June 24th. Then he goes off to Concord, New Hampshire for a 5-day institute from June 24th until June 29th. Salt Lake City and Ottawa institutes follow up in July. Split, Croatia, and Berlin, German institutes are scheduled for early August. If you still haven't signed up or you're thinking about attending one of Alan's upcoming workshops, check out pianotechnique.net/Alan Fraser Institute for detailed schedule and description on each institute. I hope we'll be able to have Alan on the show very soon, where he'll be talking about his recent institutes and experiences. In his absence, we'll hear a part of an audio interview he gave to pianist Jeffrey Thomas in Belgrade, Serbia last year. But before we get to that, let me give you a quick update on what we've been up to on pianotechnique.org. We're currently at 430 published lessons, lectures, and ATMs. ATM stands for Awareness Through Movement sessions that help pianists learn about how their body works and use that knowledge in their piano playing. We have started a few new series, such as the Organic Hand, the Hand Structure and Scales, and we're also occasionally publishing Alan's lessons with his mentor Phil Cohen. These lessons are kind of unique since they feature a neurosensory approach to piano playing. Alan describes that Phil is fascinated by the question of what's happening physically and neurologically when the piano was played really well. He developed a way of teaching the movements of the hand and arm to translate into exact gestures that literally sculpted phrase, shape, and emotional expression. Phil's work is amazing, a pianistic equivalent to the pioneering work of Freud, but after 10 wonderful years I still felt that more was possible, that perhaps his insight could be globalized somehow. We're also busy working on recent videos from Alan Fraser Institute in Paris, Chicago, and now Smith, and other recent institutes. They'll be available on the site in the next few days. If you would like to check out our educational service for pianists, visit pianotechnique.org. Wide selection of free videos should give you an idea on how the site works, but do drop us a line if you have any questions or suggestions, and we'll be happy to get back to you. And now, enjoy the interview where Alan talks about solving the technical difficulties.
How do you solve technical difficulties?
Most technical difficulties are actually musical difficulties. So to solve a technical difficulty, first thing you have to do is figure out what are the musical challenges of this particular passage. Let's say I've got a passage of big chords in the right hand that are leaping from one octave to another. Mm-hmm. So I take the lower octave chords with my left hand, and I take the upper octave chords with my right hand, and then I try to get the musical sound I want.
Right.
And then strangely enough, I notice that to really get the sound I want, now there's no difficulty, there's no leaps.
Right.
So now I can just, and then I'll notice a strange thing. I'll notice my hand is actually behaving completely differently from the way it was behaving when I was trying to leap with my right hand. Like both hands are behaving completely differently, which means they got the sonority that I want through different means than the means I was obsessed with in terms of trying to solve the leap. Then I'll play, for instance, 2 notes of the lower chord with my right hand and 2 notes with the left hand, and then 2 notes of the upper chord with the right hand and 2 notes with the left. And again, I'm making.
And now you're having to do some leaping.
But it's less leaping because it's 2 notes, right, rather than 4 notes, 4 notes. And again, if my ear is attentive, then I will create that new sound that I wanted to create, which was bold and sharp and had a specific color. Mm-hmm. And also in the practicing of the lower chord left hand, upper chord right hand, I will get many different colors. I won't just be satisfied with one. I'll try, how about a little sharper? How about a little bit more velvet? How about a little bit faster? How about a little bit more staccato? How about a little bit more lyrical? And then every time I change the sound, I notice something unusual and new is happening in my physical organization. I sense that. Then so
then you might say that you have made new discoveries, and you're trying to then you've got new sound, and then you work backwards to figure out what the physical organization is that produced that sound.
Not quite. I don't even, if I do the left hand lower chord, right hand upper chord really well and get the sound I want, if I now play all the chords with the right hand, I will not feel like I'm leaping anymore. Because the musical demands to create the sonority of the lower chord and the musical demands and create the sonority of the upper chord, already my hand is in a much higher state of tonus. It's in such a high state of tonus actually to control the sonorities that the act of leaping from one octave to the other becomes completely insignificant. It's the easiest part of the whole thing, because what you're doing is you're creating sonority, and you could even practice it all, trying to imitate legato, which is again going back to a more mechanical thing. But then you realize if you try to imitate a legato with no pedal and playing a lower octave chord and then going to the upper chord and actually trying to grab the notes of the upper chord without any airspace, and then of course it seems like it would be tremendously tense, but your hand is mobilized in a completely new way. And then you realize you didn't even really know those chords, because you're in the lower chord and now I'm going to leap to an upper chord, but I'm trying to do it with no sense of air, and then my fingers can't find the notes.
And no sense of the real quality of the chord then.
Yeah, so this is addressing the actual mechanical problem more. Then you realize I don't even know the notes, and then if I can create a true legato, like in terms of the sound, then my fingers they completely change their whole way of moving in order to be accurate. And then my hand has learned the shape of the chord in a much deeper way. And again, it's now trying to get a legato, a non-pedal legato, forces my hand to behave totally differently from the way it was behaving when I was just perceiving the leap as the technical challenge. So by saying, no, the leap is not the technical challenge, there's a whole bunch of musical challenges in here that I'm not even looking at because I'm preoccupied with this damn leap. Okay, so let's throw the leap out the window and open up this world of the other musical possibilities that are in here. My physical organization changes radically to do all that musical stuff that's there as a possibility, and it completely supersedes the leap as the primary concern that I have with this passage. And then I find, strange enough, that I can just play the leaps no problem. Because my hand is more empowered. My hand is musically empowered. I've given my hand the real job, not the so-called mechanical challenge of having to leap.
The athletic job.
Yeah, the athletic job, exactly.
What about brilliant passage work?
There are many perceived difficulties which are not the real difficulties. So let's say I have a quick run of 10 notes. I might divide it between two hands, and then play it extremely fast, like that. I might divide one hand into sections without any sense of putting the thumb under or putting the fingers over. I might take my hand, bunch it into an extremely stiff bird beak and tap each note, and try to get as close to speed as I can, like that. Which again, you're replacing one technical difficulty with another technical difficulty. I might take some of the notes and overhold them, overhold 4, overhold 3, overhold 4, so that. Because often in passage work, what's happening is some fingers work well and other fingers don't work well. And there's one finger in particular where you'll tend to fall down. Many times it's the thumb. If you overhold, let's say 5 notes in a passage, then all 5 fingers are holding the note, then giving them the job of overholding the note forces you to actually sense where you were falling down. And then you can now change the way you play the 5 notes. Sorry to stop you.
There's 2 questions I have then. One is, how do you know when you're falling down? What does that mean? And how does the overholding tell you the problem?
If you're playing at passage work and you're bringing any sort of weight technique into any of the fingers, then that will create a fall down. What I mean by a fall down is that the arch is collapsing, or the metacarpal phalangeal joint is emptying out rather than filling itself in. When the metacarpal phalangeal joint flexes, it fills itself up. It's like air going into a lung and puffing the knuckle up into the air.
Rise.
Now, yeah, so if the knuckle is falling, my metacarpal phalangeal joint still could be good if it feels pumped from the inside. But if it's collapsing, like the middle of it is emptying out, then it's not working as a finger anymore, because the finger is a lever that flexes, and now the metacarpal joint is collapsing. So that means the finger is now in a state of extending itself. So the middle of the arch is falling down. The finger is actually extending itself, except for the bottom part, which is curled. So the whole thing is just collapsing into a mess, a completely incapable kind of a mess. That's just, now you're tense and you've got to try and hold yourself there from not collapsing further and try to get yourself back up, but it's a struggle. And so it's the down and up forces just like in complete conflict with each other. So the sense of falling is, even if I just hold on to that metacarpal phalangeal joint and stop it from falling, then still basically it's falling because it's not rising. If it's rising, it's because there's a healthy movement within the joint itself. So I'm going along, going taka 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 taka, and sometimes I hear this unevenness. So that indicates to me that some fingers are succumbing to this tendency to fall, which was the result of my relaxation arm weight technique, which I did for years. So if I overhold, overholding forces the joint to stand up.
Okay.
And then that's instantly a very different feeling. And then the contrast between that feeling, then I notice which one of the fingers was the falling down one, because I notice where the contrast in feeling is the greatest. Now, the other thing about this particular one is that the passage work will often be arrhythmic. If I, for instance, revolutionary two, da 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 da. He marks accents in every fourth note. So if you really ba da ya da 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 ya da da da, and not only are they accented notes, they have a certain pizzazz to them, but the three notes in between each accented 16th are completely even and relatively light. If you use only your ear, and really force yourself to a 10,000th of a second to be really, really even, you will notice that your hand is behaving completely different. And your hand is starting to do a lot of that stuff that I just described in physical terms. So many of our technical problems are solved by not using our ear with enough, assiduously enough. I write about this in my second book, actually, in Honing the Pianistic Self-Image. There's a chapter on the Revolutionary Tube where just that was happening. And the pianist really thought he had a technical problem. Oh, my hand feels wooden, my hand feels this, my hand feels that. But it was uneven. And when he played really evenly, the hand started to behave well. And then when he sped up, then it started getting uneven again. And then the hand feels like wood. And when he kept the evenness, then the hand started behaving well. So often, or a particular articulative, like a slightly non-legato, instead of diddle, 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 diddle. Oftentimes, a true legato will actually cramp the hand. So I work a lot between overholding to increase the sense of legato, and then when the reflexes have achieved a full legato, so that they really understand the basis for evenness, then if you go to a non-legato, it will, and the reflexes maintain that sense of creating evenness, then the slight constraint which is inherent in a true legato is you're released from that, and it gets even better. But the reflexes have to be trained to the nth point of perfection in being able to create evenness. So again, for instance, there's when you have broken octaves, da-dee, 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 like 1-5, 1-5, 1-5.
Right.
And then, for instance, I might work with that just in terms of sound, just to get ba-ga-da-dum. For instance, 1-5, 1-5, ba-ga-da-dum. And then I'll realize that my hand is behaving like some sort of sclerotic, non-jellyfish hand, and then I have to stand up more, and then do that quicker, and then I have to stand up a lot lighter because if I stand up heavier, but all the time I'm just going for a specific sound, ba-ga-da-dum. But you have to be ultra demanding that this is the quickest, most sprightly, quick, incisive ding-a-dum possible, faster than you thought was possible, and then the hand has to transform in order to do it. And of course, you've trained your hand about standing up, about the arch structure, about the moving finger levers, creating that arch structure rather than holding it in place. So you've prepared the land, you've prepared the ground, so to speak. But then you have to give yourself a high musical goal, but a musical goal which is within your reach. So a complicated technical problem, you break it down into a place where the main presenting technical problem is removed. And then you give a musical goal, like a certain articulation or a certain sound, create that, and then sense how that feels, and then start to create that same sound with only one hand in the original context of the piece. So it's always working from the ear backwards, and working actually from your musical imagination to, okay, how should that sound? Okay, how should that feel if I'm creating it in a non-technically demanding context, and then shift that to the nervous system learns, and then the hand starts playing well. Because why? Because it has an image. You're trying to solve some technical problem. You've never experienced the technical problem solved. So how can you solve it when there's no inner picture of what that is? Create the picture inside yourself. Create it in your experience. Dig-a-dum. You take that with two hands. Dig-a-dum. 5-1 left hand, 1-5 right hand. Dig-a-dum. There's no leap, and you can really refine the actual sound and the feel of it, and then transfer that to one hand. When the kinesthetic image is, when the experiential sensorial image is in the body, in your own experience, in your ear, it's all related. Then now you're trying to solve the technical problem with your one hand, and you can do it because you've got something to relate to. You've got the image that you're relating it to.